Hello, Caryl Stern.
Well, hello.
It is such an honor to be with you today
Well, thank
and
you.
to have what I'm calling the necessary conversations. You've led UNICEF, USA, the Walton Family Foundation. You worked across nonprofit and corporate and philanthropic worlds. So my question is, from your vantage point, what is shifting in how leaders think about health and community today?
I've given some thought to that, and I think there are two diametrically opposing shifts taking place. I think that in many places, people are looking for kind of this nationalized health programming, and they're looking for let's recreate new rules, let's re-examine the science, and in other places there is a deep recognition that successful health is dependent on a community-based model. And that when the community is engaged and involved, when you have the cultural nuance right, when you understand the needs of that community and you work together, you have a healthy community.
In your book, I Believe in Zero, and I love that title.
Thank you.
You made the case to reduce the number of preventable deaths in children under the age of 5 from 19,000 each day to 0. What lessons learned from your work in global health can be applied to addressing health gaps and strengthening communities here in the U.S.?
Germs do not know borders.
Right.
And germs do not know economics. So you can be as wealthy and as accessible to healthcare as possible, or as poor as possible, and the same disease can kill you both.
Right.
So understanding that and accepting that health and good health shouldn't be a privilege, it should be a right, and really building towards that goal is critically important.
Let's talk about the importance of collaboration. The strategy you put in place at the Walton Family Foundation emphasized grantee-led approaches and more collaboration with nonprofits and other foundations. That was music to my ears. Why are community-led approaches and collaboration so important?
Well, one, they're important because if you don't have that collaboration with the community, you don't understand the cultural nuance, you can't succeed. That's one way. And the other is, I always say this to people, that in many cases philanthropy is a fruitcake like at Christmas. There's only really one of them and we keep passing it around. I will give to your charity this week, and then next week you will come to me and you will say, I will give to your charity, and we will go back and forth. And when our mutual friend gets honored, we will both give to that one. By coming to the table together, we could stretch our dollars. We could do more. We can bring different ideas to the table. The corporate perspective may be different than the volunteer perspective or the nonprofit. The mom perspective may be different than the dad or the childless perspective. Having all of that at the table, I think, brings us our best answers.
If we look at what I'm calling the urgency of now, we're experiencing widening gaps between segments in our society and increasing pressure on both business and communities. But lives are hanging in the balance. It'd be different if it were industry, money, you
Right.
name it. But lives are hanging in the balance. So why do you think this moment demands new forms of cross-sector collaboration?
Tim Shriver, whose family founded Special Olympics, and he now runs something called Unite. He actually says what we need is to stop seeking common ground and start seeking common solutions.
Wow.
And he used an example when he was explaining this kind of theoretical framework to me, and he said, let's look at gun control. So if you were pro-gun control and I was anti, we could probably talk till the cows come home.
Right.
We're not going to change each other's
Right.
views. But if we live in this town and the topic, instead of pro or anti-gun control, was less violence in our schools, and we could come together to find a solution we could both live with,
Right.
we may someday get to the conversation on gun control that we could talk to each other and find something that would work.
Exactly.
So I really believe we're at a pivotal moment for the need for common solutions. And that because for so many years we only sought common ground That's what drove the divisiveness that we're seeing now.
And so my last question, I have to ask you, having the scope on all of this, what is your soul saying is necessary? And if you were leading it, what would be the next step?
I can only offer you a story, and it
right.
is in the book.
I love
but,
stories. I'm a journalist. You know I love stories.
So I had the privilege to visit a number of refugee camps during my work with UNICEF, and I was in the Zaatari camp in Jordan, and it was early on in the Syrian refugee crisis, so there was a lot of people in the camp, and it was winter, and most of the people in the camp did not have the clothing needed for winter. So on this particular day, sure enough, there was a girl. She must have been 10, 12 years old. She had a baby on her hip, which was a sibling. I don't know how old the baby was, and a little boy who was about 3. And the little boy barely had a jacket and didn't have shoes on. And there was ice on the ground. And they were out there when we first started work in the morning, and they were still behind us at the end of the day. And we realized we hadn't eaten all day, which meant these 3 kids had not eaten all day because they never left us. And one of my colleagues from UNICEF, we had worked in a tent where they were teaching women how to breastfeed, and we give the women these little micro biscuits that have all the nutrients they need. So she took her biscuit out of the backpack, and she handed it to this little 3-year-old boy. And we all expected him to just take that biscuit and run away as fast as he could and gobble it down before anybody could get it from him. This is a 3-year-old.
Right.
And for the first time, he made eye contact with us. He looked up, and he looked at the biscuit, took the biscuit, and he broke it in half, and he handed half to the baby. And we all cried. That's what we need, okay? If this little 3-year-old knew enough to understand, even if you only have a little, you could have a little less and someone could have a little more, and that it's going to take both of us. And if that little 3-year-old knows that, we all know that.
Right.
We just need to be reminded, and we need to make sure we're reminding our children.
Thank you for that. And it really is that simple.
It is.
Carol, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad there's you in the world.
Oh, no,
I will tell you that. Thank you. Thank you so much.